You stop explaining yourself. At first, this seems subtle, almost unnoticeable, but for a woman who's used to hearing you justify every action, every word, every emotion, your silence hits her like a cold gust of reality. It's not about being dismissive. It's not about stonewalling or ghosting. It's about shifting the center of gravity back to yourself. Because when you constantly explain yourself, you unknowingly give her the upper hand. You hand her the power to evaluate you, approve you, or reject your reasoning. You stand in front of a silent judge, hoping she understands you, hoping she validates your decisions, hoping she says, "Okay, I get it now." But the brutal truth is, many women don't want to understand. They want control, and the more you try to explain, the more rope you give her to hang your self-worth. But the day you stop, when you look her in the eyes and calmly choose not to overexpress, not to overrationalize, not to defend your every breath, everything changes. That's when you communicate not through words, but through energy, and your energy says, "I don't need to be understood to stand firm in who I am." That unshakable calm, that unapologetic silence, that refusal to seek permission, that's what pierces her perception of you. Because for once, you are no longer playing the game of reassurance. You're no longer trying to win her approval. You're just living, standing, being, without shrinking, and at first she may challenge it. She may test it. She may even accuse you of being cold or distant. Why? Because the loss of your explanations feels like the loss of control. She's used to your vulnerability being exposed every time she questions you. She's used to you unraveling your thoughts in front of her so she can dissect them, so she can subtly influence them. But now, you give her nothing to grab onto. No emotional thread to pull, no mental maze to twist you into. You simply let your actions speak. You let your decisions exist without over-clarification. Maybe you decide not to attend a gathering she invited you to. Before, you would have written a paragraph, "I'm tired. I've had a long day. I hope you understand. I really do care." But now, you just say, "I won't be coming." Full stop. That's it. And that quiet confidence forces her to reprocess you. Suddenly, you're no longer predictable. You're no longer the man who explains himself into guilt, into compromise, into emotional exhaustion. You're the man who draws a line without shouting. You're the man who moves with decisiveness and emotional discipline. And what this does over time is, it builds mystery. It builds presence. It creates a shift in the dynamic. Because now she's the one leaning in. She's the one asking questions. She's the one sensing that something's different, something's elevated. She's trying to feel you out again, because you're no longer emotionally exposed. She starts to wonder, what changed in him? Why doesn't he need my validation anymore? Why is he so grounded, so silent, so sure of himself? And in that wondering, she sees you not as a man seeking to be understood, but as a man to be respected. That shift in her perception is irreversible. She may never admit it. She may act like it doesn't affect her, but inside she feels it, because your refusal to explain yourself becomes a form of masculine leadership. It tells her, "I'm not afraid of being misunderstood. I'm not here to be shaped. I'm already formed." And once she witnesses that kind of internal power, she can never see you the same again. You're no longer the guy she could manipulate with emotions or guilt. You've stepped out of that role. You've evolved into something more. A man who doesn't beg to be seen, but who is seen simply because he holds himself in a way that demands it. You go silent, not out of anger, but out of clarity. This kind of silence is not passive. It's not emotional withdrawal meant to punish her. It's the silence of a man who finally sees everything for what it is, and no longer feels the need to fight for something that is draining him. You don't slam doors, you don't scream, you don't deliver some long-winded monologue about how you deserve better. You just stop talking, and that silence, so calm, so absolute, shakes her more than any argument ever could, because when a man goes silent with awareness, it speaks volumes. It says, I've observed your patterns. I've watched you play games with my time, my heart, my energy. I've stayed still long enough to understand what you're doing, and now I'm removing myself from the equation, not because I'm broken, but because I'm awake. That kind of silence is terrifying to a woman who's used to being able to provoke a reaction. If she can spark jealousy, she knows you care. If she can make you explain yourself, she knows you're invested. If she can get you to argue, plead, or chase, she knows she still holds power. But what happens when you don't flinch, when she pulls away, and you don't run after her, when she gives you attitude, and you don't match her energy? When she gives you the cold shoulder, and you give her peace in return, that's when she begins to panic internally, because your silence now becomes the loudest message she's ever received. It tells her you've reached a level of self-respect where chaos no longer tempts you. You've detached not out of bitterness, but out of a deep understanding that staying in dysfunction is a betrayal of yourself. This kind of silence doesn't scream, look at me. It whispers, I no longer need you to see me. It's the moment when a man stops seeking closure. He doesn't need to hear the reasons, the excuses, the justifications. He knows they won't change anything. He's seen enough. He's felt the imbalance. And rather than beg for reciprocity, he walks away with his dignity intact. That silence stings because it's not reactive. It's not loud. It's composed, mature, and self-contained. It's the kind of silence that forces reflection in the other person. And here's the irony. The moment you go silent is often the moment she starts making noise. Suddenly, she's sending messages, she's questioning where you've gone, she's trying to pull you back with fake apologies or mixed signals, but now you're immune, you've broken the cycle, because silence gave you clarity, and clarity gave you power. You see that every time you engaged emotionally, argued, defended yourself, tried to explain, you only stayed stuck in her web, but now you've exited it without announcement. This isn't about winning or losing. It's about peace. It's about liberation. It's about no longer allowing someone's inconsistency to drain your spirit. When a man reaches that level of quiet confidence, it changes everything. She feels it in the space you leave behind. Not just your presence, but the emotional fuel she used to draw from you. Your energy was her food. Now you've stopped feeding her ego. You've stopped reacting. And that's when she realizes she may have pushed too far. She may have mistaken your kindness for weakness, your patience for passivity, your attention for need. But now all of that is gone, because your silence, born from clarity, speaks louder than any goodbye. It says, I gave you chances, I showed you consistency, I offered you transparency, and in return I received confusion, disrespect, or manipulation. So now I choose myself, I choose peace, I choose distance, and no woman forgets that kind of exit. Not because you said it, but because she felt it in the vacuum you left, a silence so complete, so grounded, that it lingers in her memory far longer than any words ever could. You enforce a boundary once and never repeat it. This is the moment that separates boys from men, the weak from the grounded, and the emotionally dependent from the truly sovereign. A man who enforces a boundary once and never repeats it creates a ripple effect that changes the entire dynamic of the relationship. Because he's no longer just talking, no longer just hoping she understands, no longer hoping she'll change. He's acting. And in the realm of relationships, action is what redefines respect. When a man speaks a boundary and then doesn't enforce it, he becomes background noise. But when he draws a line in the sand, calmly, clearly, and then follows through without drama, that's when everything shifts. At first, she might test it, as many do. She'll step one toe across that line, not because she's evil, but because she wants to see if you meant it. If you say, "I won't tolerate being disrespected in front of others," and she does it again, all eyes are not on your words, but on your response. If you argue, explain, or beg her to stop, you've already lost. But if you say it once and then back it with action, maybe you leave the room, maybe you go quiet, maybe you remove your presence altogether, she feels something powerful, consequence, not punishment. Not revenge, but the unmistakable reality that this man honors himself and will not keep negotiating his worth. Most men, when disrespected or crossed, go into pleading mode. They explain, they get emotional. They go back and forth, thinking that more words will make her see. But all that does is communicate one thing. He's afraid to lose her. And when a man is afraid to lose a woman, she knows it. She senses that she can push, test, even manipulate. And he'll still stay. He might complain, cry, raise his voice, but he won't leave, he won't change course, so the boundary becomes meaningless, like a sign with no fence behind it. But not you, not the man who's had enough. Not the man who's done sacrificing his inner peace just to keep the emotional rhythm going. When you set that boundary and follow through the very first time, she feels your backbone, and that moment burns itself into her psyche. It teaches her something deeper than any conversation ever could. You mean what you say. And that is terrifying to someone who has gotten used to emotionally leading you. Because now, she knows you're not afraid of discomfort. You're not afraid of losing her. You're more afraid of losing yourself. You don't yell. You don't write a speech. You just act. You said, "I won't tolerate disloyalty." And when you saw it, you left. Maybe not forever, maybe not permanently, but immediately. No second warning, no desperate explanation, just space. And that space becomes the discipline. That space becomes the correction. That space becomes the new standard. You didn't do it to manipulate. You did it because self-respect demanded it. And once you start living like that, your energy changes. She sees a version of you that's non-negotiable, that refuses to beg, that doesn't chase love. It upholds love through standards, not sacrifice. And maybe she gets angry. Maybe she lashes out. Maybe she tries to gaslight you, telling you you're overreacting, being too rigid, too cold. But deep down, even beneath her frustration, she respects it, because that kind of response can't be faked. You're not trying to win the fight. You're simply stepping out of it. You're no longer trying to be heard. You've already spoken, once, and after that, your silence and distance speak louder. That's the kind of masculine energy that doesn't just make her rethink her actions. It makes her rethink her perception of you entirely. Because here's the truth. When you repeat a boundary over and over, you dilute its strength. But when you only say it once, and then you transform it into a living law, and laws are not open to debate. They're not up for emotional negotiation. They are lived, and now she knows. This man doesn't issue warnings. He makes decisions, This man isn't obsessed with being liked. He's devoted to being respected, and that respect, once it's earned in that way, it doesn't go away, because now, in her mind, you're no longer just a man who wants boundaries. You're a man who is a boundary. And no woman ever forgets the moment she realized she could no longer play with your line. You outgrow her emotionally, and she knows it. At first, it's not loud. It's not dramatic. It's not a sudden announcement that you're done playing the same old games. It's something much quieter, much more unsettling to her, because it begins with your peace. You don't respond to her passive, aggressive remarks the way you used to. You don't rise to her emotional bait. The things that once triggered you now barely register. The highs and lows she used to pull you through, the fights, the sudden affection, the withdrawal, the confusion. You no longer dance to any of it. Not because you've become cold, but because you've grown. You've emotionally matured past the need for her approval, her chaos, her validation, and the contrast becomes blindingly obvious to her. She begins to notice that you no longer require her emotional energy to be stable. Where you once reacted instantly, defending yourself, proving your loyalty, pleading to be seen, you now simply pause, you process, you respond with measured calm, you say less, you observe more. That kind of control isn't something you can fake. It only comes from pain transmuted into wisdom, from cycles repeated one too many times, from deep reflection in your alone time where you finally say, I'm done giving someone else this much power over my inner world. She feels this shift, not in your words, but in your absence from emotional participation. You don't play anymore, you don't try to win, you just see it for what it is. And you opt out. She tries her usual tactics. Maybe she criticizes you in front of others. Maybe she gives you the cold shoulder to provoke a chase. Maybe she flirts with someone just to make you jealous, and you see it. But it doesn't move you. You see through it, not because you're blind to emotion, but because you've learned how to manage your own. You've learned that real power is quiet, that self-control isn't weakness, it's strength in its most disciplined form. And this unshakable calm forces her to reevaluate who you've become. The man she once had a grip on now slips through her fingers, not because he's trying to escape, but because he's elevated. He's no longer available for the same arguments, no longer responsive to the same manipulations. And this terrifies her more than any angry outburst ever could. Because now she's dealing with a man who doesn't need her emotionally the way he used to. A man who's not afraid to be alone. A man who doesn't need the relationship to define his value. And for a woman who once had emotional influence over you, this new version of you is unsettling, foreign, and strangely magnetic. You start noticing the small things, how she repeats the same emotional patterns to get a rise out of you, how she masks disrespect with sarcasm, how she shifts blame when accountability gets too close. But now you're not reacting, you're not raising your voice, you're not defending yourself, you're simply watching. You've stepped outside the cycle, and you see it clearly, like watching a play you've seen too many times to enjoy anymore. And the moment she realizes she can no longer emotionally pull you back in, something shifts inside her, because she doesn't just see you as the same man, she sees growth, and emotional growth is the one thing that makes someone rethink everything. You're not seeking revenge, you're not playing a role, you're not trying to be better than her. You've simply elevated to a place where your peace is no longer negotiable, where your emotional world is built from the inside, not constantly tossed around by what she does or doesn't do. And the beauty of this kind of outgrowing is that it's not hostile, it's not hateful, it's not bitter, it's just still, it's quiet confidence. It's the deep, solid knowing that you don't need her to change for you to be okay. That you've already changed in the one place that matters asterisk within yourself. Asterisk, and that's what hits her hardest. Because now she's not losing the version of you she used to control. She's losing the man you've become. A man who doesn't just want love, he wants asterisk peace asterisk. A man who doesn't seek approval, he radiates presence. A man who doesn't stay stuck in emotional loops. He evolves, and that evolution, that unshakable maturity, that rare self-mastery, is the very thing she never saw coming. You focus on purpose, not her approval. This shift doesn't happen overnight, but when it does, it changes everything. When you redirect your energy from trying to win her attention to building your mission, she feels the difference immediately. It's in your tone, your schedule, your silence, your eyes, where once you were available for every call, every message, every need she expressed. Now your availability becomes rare, and not because you're playing games. It's because your life has a direction, and you've stopped making her your destination. That internal change is louder than any confession of love. It's the silent yet powerful energy of a man who's finally realized his own value, is not dependent on how she responds to him. At first, she doesn't know how to process it. You used to drop everything for her. You used to prioritize her feelings above your own path. If she was upset, your day stopped. If she pulled back, you chased. If she criticized your effort, you gave more. But now, your time is no longer reactive. It's disciplined. Your mornings begin with purpose. Your thoughts are no longer centered around what she thinks of you, but what you're building, what you're crafting, what you're chasing that's bigger than her attention. You're building something of your own now, and that makes your presence carry a weight she's never felt before. She'll test it. She'll dangle the carrot of affection just to see if you'll bite. She might even pull away emotionally to see if you'll abandon your growth to get her back. But you don't flinch. You don't abandon your goals for temporary comfort. And that's when she realizes she's no longer in control of the emotional levers, because the approval she once used as bait has lost its power over you. You're no longer dependent on how she feels to validate your masculinity. You're busy, not distracted asterisk focused asterisk. You're not ignoring her. You're just not consumed by her. And this isn't about becoming cold or indifferent. It's not about neglect. It's about alignment. You've finally aligned your energy with your higher self instead of outsourcing your self-worth to her emotional feedback. You don't need her to believe in you, because now you believe in yourself. And when a man enters that zone, when he starts living for a purpose greater than romantic validation, his energy becomes magnetic, not because he's trying to be, but because he radiates confidence, direction, and intention. He's no longer looking for permission to be who he is. She notices the way you carry yourself differently. Your eyes don't scan for her reaction. Your mood isn't dictated by her tone. You no longer try to fix every dip in the emotional atmosphere between you. Instead, you're still solid focused, and she feels that power, because nothing is more attractive or more threatening to a woman who's used to being the center of your emotional orbit than a man who's become the center of his own. And this kind of focus is not temporary. It builds momentum. One small decision to choose your mission over comfort becomes a habit. One habit becomes a routine. One routine becomes a lifestyle. Now, she's not just dealing with the man who used to worship her. She's facing a version of you that sees through illusions, delays gratification, and respects himself enough not to pause his life for someone who hasn't earned that level of priority. And that respect, it forces her to see you differently. It forces her to confront the truth, that she's no longer the gravity in your life. Your purpose is. She may feel uncertain. She may begin to feel like she's losing you. And in many ways she is. She's losing the version of you who made her the mission. She's losing the man who chased her moods like they were sacred. And in return, she's witnessing the birth of a man she can no longer play with, a man whose purpose cannot be negotiated. And when that happens, the dynamic is forever changed, because the man who leads himself can no longer be led by someone else's approval, and that realization, when it hits her, reshapes her entire view of you. You let her go, completely, not halfway, not with one eye still on her social media, not with quiet hopes that maybe she'll come around, not with lingering texts sent late at night, hoping for just a sliver of her attention. No, asterisk, completely asterisk. And that kind of detachment is something few men ever master, because it's not just about walking away physically. It's about releasing the emotional grip she had over your heart, your mind, and your identity. It's about cutting that invisible thread you clung to, out of memory, out of nostalgia, out of fear, or out of love, and finally choosing to stand without needing her presence to make you feel complete. At first, it's hard, because when you love a woman deeply, the bond doesn't just break with silence or distance. The mind replays moments. It replays the way she looked at you when things were good, the way she touched your arm when she felt safe, the laughter, the silence after a long conversation, the way her energy filled the room. It remembers the softness and the spark. But what you must remember, what you must never forget, is that it also remembers the chaos, the confusion, the mixed signals, the way she pulled away when you were most open, the way she left you hanging emotionally while still pretending to care, the way she chipped away at your confidence by making you feel like you were never quite enough, and one day you just stop. You stop trying to decode her. You stop giving yourself over to the illusion of potential. You stop believing that if you just held on a little longer, things would shift. You stop waiting for closure because you realize closure isn't something she can give you. It's something you give yourself when you accept the truth. Asterisk, she wasn't meant to come with you to your next level. Asterisk, that realization doesn't come with fireworks. It comes with silence, a calm, grounded silence that whispers, "I'm done." You don't block her out of spite. You don't delete the photos in anger. You simply remove the emotional charge. You choose to carry the lesson, not the pain. You don't hate her. You don't curse her name. You don't wish for karma to balance the scales. You just walk, not to hurt her, not to prove a point, but because you finally understand your worth. You finally see how much energy you wasted explaining yourself, proving your loyalty, and trying to make a broken dynamic feel whole. And now, you're done bleeding for something that was never feeding you. This is when she starts to notice, not because you made a big announcement, not because you went on a social media cleanse or posted cryptic stories to spark her curiosity, but because your absence becomes real. Not performative, not temporary, real. You no longer check her updates. You no longer respond to "hey, just checking on you" at texts. You no longer circle back out of boredom or loneliness. She feels it. She senses the shift. She realizes that you've stepped out of the emotional tug-of-war that once kept you both tied in dysfunction. And now it's not her decision to bring you back. It's yours, and you've already made it. When you truly let go, you don't need revenge. You don't need closure conversations. You don't need her to understand what she lost. You no longer require her to validate your growth, your pain, or your process. You understand that some chapters end without applause, without explanation, without clarity, and that's okay, because the real power is in your ability to walk forward, not bitter, not broken, but wiser, stronger, and whole. Letting go completely means reclaiming all the parts of yourself you gave away too freely. It means focusing on your evolution, not her reactions. It means understanding that peace is worth more than temporary pleasure, and that chasing someone who doesn't fully value you is the most expensive emotional debt a man can carry. And once that weight is lifted, once you truly cut the tie, you walk lighter. You breathe deeper, you stop waiting for messages that never come, you stop checking to see if she viewed your story, you stop performing, you simply live, and it's in that living, quiet, purposeful, and unattached, that she feels your absence as presence. A presence she can no longer access, a version of you she can't reach anymore, and deep down she knows she didn't lose a man who needed her. She lost a man who outgrew her grip. And that realization is something she'll carry long after your name fades from her phone, because you didn't just let her go, you set yourself free, and that's the moment she realizes what you did wasn't out of ego, bitterness, or revenge. It was out of evolution. You didn't walk away to teach her a lesson. You walked away because you finally learned your own. The man she once knew no longer exists. In his place stands someone calmer, wiser, and unshakably grounded. She'll never see you the same again, not because you changed to impress her, but because you changed in spite of her. And now your absence holds more power than your presence ever did, because you chose yourself. And once a man fully chooses himself, he becomes unforgettable.